Because I've got you, I've got you. You're looking at the stars and you feel it in your heart.
We're joined now by Bonnie Dalton, Senior Manager of Contemporary Music at Creative Victoria, and we've got a couple of questions coming your way. Can you tell us a little bit about Creative Victoria and the work you're doing there?
Yeah, hello, nice to meet you. Creative Victoria is the state government body that champions and supports creative industries in Victoria. It's got a really long history of supporting contemporary music, and most recently, in the last 12 months, has issued something over $25 million to contemporary music in grants and other partnerships and strategic initiatives. So I think, there's a lot of care for contemporary music in Creative Victoria, and I think also just being aware of the fact that the pandemic in particular has really hit music globally has meant that the way that support has been designed is to sustain those artists and businesses, but also to kind of use that wonderful term of pivot, but to support the pivoting and innovation towards other income streams and things like that. And that's what this is all about today, and why it's so great to be here.
Talking about other income streams, how important is it now, talking about post-pandemic, Australia starting to open up, there was 85,000 people at the footy the other day. How important is it for artists to find other forms of revenue?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think it's, obviously the pandemic is, has really decimated so many industries, but also, and music certainly has a long way to go. We're not at 85,000 people at the shows yet. So we're really conscious of that, and the the work that's still to go in terms of getting back to normal. But also I think, just aside from the pandemic too, that it's always important to look at, growing and finding those new income streams. And, the sector's changed so much in the last 15, 20 years that it's and will continue to do so. That talk all the time in music of disruption, and the way that technology influences the way that, people consume music, and all of those things mean that, it's never static. And so I think that drive to constantly look for new ways of connecting to audiences and new ways of deriving income is just an ongoing challenge for any industry, but, particularly for music. Yeah.
How do you guys sort of come up with keep your finger on the pulse and sort of know what being agile and stuff? Do you have a team around you, or how does that work?
Well, we really respond to the sector, so I think in that way try to stay as connected as possible to the sector, and also balancing that with the priorities within government, and really looking at ways that those two things can intersect. This is obviously an industry that runs its own race all the time, and it's not about government getting in the way or anything like that, but just more responding to what's going on and looking for what those gaps might be, looking for where intervention can help to support development or fill any gaps that might be there. So it's really it's very much about keeping those lines of communication open with the sector, and then back into government as well.
You personally have been involved in the events space for a good chunk of time. What are some of the learnings you've had from being involved with such? You must have seen some pretty cool events in that time. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I started at the Falls Festival back in 1852, I think. Things have really changed and yet stayed the same. Ultimately, it's about artists and audiences connecting with each other, and that will always be. So it's really, looking at the ways that people can do that, and whether that's a pandemic or whether that's any other reason that's kind of, put the brakes on the way that people connect. I think looking for other ways to do that is just really important. So from an events perspective, I think it's definitely changed a lot. I think become a lot more just kind of thinking about what Miff and Nina were just talking about, that thinking about things like the niche audiences and the way that people connect on a much deeper level, and that fan engagement. It's sort of whether you're looking at those much more niche festivals that have cropped up in the past probably 5 or 10 years, but also the way that even things like NFTs require a deep level of fandom in order for that engagement to kind of be meaningful. So it's just really about looking at ways of supporting, artists and audiences to get together and fall in love.
Oh, I love that.
NFTs, we go down a rabbit hole.
Oh,
there,
we
but
could
we
go.
better not.
Yeah, we better not. But
Also, because that's the full extent of my knowledge of NFTs.
yeah,
Same here,
same
here,
yeah.
so it's all good.
Probably couldn't dive too deep. But tell us about some of the changes you've seen from artists when we talk about the idea of selling out.
Well, again, to reference Smith and Nina's conversation, I think it's been a two-way change. So, when I started on Falls Festival and worked on Laneway as well, a long, long time ago, brands would sort of rock up with a banner and say, there you go, there's our sponsorship, so see you later. And as that relationship, kind of progressed, I guess, over the intervening years in both directions, whether that's with festivals or with artists, but that idea of kind of being creative together and finding ways of connecting that's meaningful and authentic, and for artists that might mean it sort of opens up the possibility of having a conversation on behalf of a brand or with a brand that can be more unique and authentic to yourself. So, going back a long time when I also managed artists, kind of talking about the idea of doing a brand partnership then was much more, this is what we need you to do. And so it was a much more difficult conversation, I think, for artists. Whereas now when there's, two people come to the table and can sit down and talk about how's this going to work, how can
Welcome to Main Stage. My name is Chadden Comerford and I'm the CEO of Unified Music Group.
In a way that that is going to, actually resonate with your audience, and that involves the artist. And, having worked on brand campaigns with artists before as well, just seeing that for an artist to actually feel like this is something that they want to talk about is the most important thing. But definitely that idea of kind of the blanket sellout it seems to be long gone, and I think that's a good thing, because being able to make those decisions and as I said before, not think that you're going to be judged for. I mean, definitely you can be judged if you make a really bad decision that in no way connects with your with what your own brand is. But in general, I think there's a lot more room to talk about it and find the middle ground.
I think what Nina said, she said, like, finding something that feels authentic. It doesn't feel like it's a forced relationship. It's natural. It exists because you care about something and it makes sense for the brand and the artist.
And it can be really hard. Like, I'm thinking back to, offers that I turned down on behalf of my artists as a manager pre-pandemic. So I can only imagine it's got even harder more recently. But sometimes it is really hard when you sort of, you've got that kind of conversation, I think, about opportunities versus temptation, and that dollar offer that might be there but just doesn't fit with what you're trying to do and doesn't fit with the kind of bigger picture of what you're doing. I think that those are all the decisions that, people make along the way, and just back themselves to know what they're doing for themselves.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Bonnie. It's been a pleasure getting to hear some of your insights and knowledge in that space.